This young nobody offers herself as an architect to a millionaire right in front of all his employees. While none of them had the guts to do it, the cleaning lady's daughter took the leap, and what happened next shocked everyone. Comment what you think will happen, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. The echo of Theodore Ted Salviano's furious voice filled every corner of the Salviano Construction Auditorium like thunder on a stormy afternoon. At 58, he carried the weight of 3 decades building the largest company in the region. But at that moment, facing over 100 employees in stony silence, he felt like a defeated man. "The project was rejected," he shouted again, slamming the papers on the table. 6 months. 6 months of work and millions invested, and the city council says there are serious structural flaws. In the back of the auditorium, Connie Mendez squeezed her calloused hands against her blue cleaning uniform. At 45, she knew every tone of Ted's voice, every expression on his time-worn face. 15 years cleaning the same hallways, watching the same man build his empire, had created a painful familiarity with his suffering. The community center that would bear the name of Marina, Ted's late wife, represented much more than an architectural project. It was his attempt to honor the memory of the woman he had loved for 30 years. The work that would define his legacy in the small town of Harmony Creek, Pennsylvania. 2 weeks, Ted continued, his voice trembling between anger and despair. "I only have 2 weeks to present a new project, or I lose the land donated by the city council. Do you understand what that means?" The engineers and architects present exchanged nervous glances. August Gus Ferreira, partner and Ted's brother-in-law, observed the scene with an expression that mixed concern and something darker. At 52, he had built his position in the company through patience and precise calculations, and he saw in this crisis a unique opportunity. "Bring me your best architect," Ted roared, his fists clenched. "Someone who can solve this. Someone who understands that this isn't just about concrete and steel, but about preserving Marina's memory." The silence that followed was deafening. Each professional present knew the complexity of the challenge. The original project had been developed by the most experienced team in the construction company, reviewed by specialists from Pittsburgh. If they hadn't been able to satisfy the requirements of the city council, who could? It was then that a timid hand rose in the back of the auditorium. Connie felt her heart race as she saw her daughter Izzy, just 19 years old, rising slowly among the rows of trained professionals. The girl she had raised alone, who spent her nights drawing by the light of a dim lamp in the small apartment they shared, was offering to solve the problem that the best architects in the region had failed to solve. "Mr. Salviano," said Izzy, her voice firm but respectful. "You'd like to give it a try?" A murmur of disbelief ran through the auditorium. Ted frowned, trying to identify who dared interrupt him. When his eyes found the thin young woman, her brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, wearing clothes that betrayed her humble origins, his first reaction was irritation. "And you are?" "Izzy Mendez, sir, Connie's daughter." The mention of the cleaning lady's name provoked a new wave of whispers. Gus leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with malice. He saw there an opportunity to expose Ted's despair, to show how his partner was losing control. "You have a degree in architecture?" Ted asked, already anticipating the negative answer. "No, sir, but I've studied on my own. I have projects, ideas." The laughter started low, coming from the younger engineers, but soon spread throughout the auditorium. The situation seemed absurd. A 19-year-old girl, the cleaning lady's daughter, without academic training, proposing to solve a problem that had defeated experienced professionals. Connie closed her eyes, feeling the tears burning behind her eyelids. She knew her daughter's exceptional talent, the notebooks filled with drawings she created during the early hours, the hours she spent at the municipal library studying architecture and engineering books. But she also knew the cruel world in which they lived, where origin and academic training mattered more than natural talent. "This is ridiculous," someone murmured among those present. "We're wasting time." Ted studied the young woman's determined face. There was something in her eyes, a flame that he recognized from having seen it in his own mirror during his early years as a builder. It was the hunger of someone who had nothing to lose, the determination of someone who needed to prove their worth to the world. "Do you have any projects to show me?" he asked, ignoring the muttered protests around him. Izzy walked to the front of the auditorium, taking a sketchbook from her worn bag. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm as she began to explain her ideas about sustainable architecture, material reuse, and harmonious integration with the natural environment. In a matter of minutes, she had sketched a revolutionary structure on the whiteboard, using concepts that many of the architects present barely knew. Her lines were precise, her technical explanations surprisingly solid for someone without academic training. The auditorium gradually quieted down, disbelief giving way to genuine interest. Ted watched every movement of the young woman, every line she drew, recognizing there an innovative vision that could not only solve the current problem, but revolutionize the way his company approached new projects. When Izzy finished her impromptu presentation, a heavy silence filled the room. Ted looked at the drawing, then at the young woman, and finally at the trained professionals who had failed to offer a solution. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." Gus stood up abruptly, his face red with indignation. "Ted, you can't be seriously considering hiring an untrained girl to solve a problem of this magnitude. That would be a humiliation for our company." But Ted wasn't listening. His eyes remained fixed on Izzy's project, seeing there not only a technical solution, but an opportunity for redemption that he hadn't expected to find. The decision he would make in the next few minutes would forever change the lives of everyone present, triggering a series of events that would test not only the competence of the young self-taught architect, but also the prejudices and ambitions of a family business built on decades of tradition and social hierarchy. Ted's decision echoed through the main office like a time bomb about to explode. "Izzy Mendez is hired on a temporary basis," he announced the following morning, ignoring the employees' incredulous stares. "She will have 2 weeks to fully develop her project." Gus slammed his fist on the mahogany desk, making the coffee cups tremble. "This is insane, Ted. A 19-year-old girl, the cleaning lady's daughter, in charge of a multi-million-dollar project. The clients will abandon us when they find out. The clients will abandon us if we don't deliver the project," Ted retorted, but his voice carried an uncertainty that he couldn't completely hide. "Marina always said that talent doesn't choose its cradle. Maybe it's time we proved that." In the hallways of the construction company, whispers spread like wildfire. Izzy walked among the hostile gazes of the engineers, carrying her project folder like a shield. Each step echoed on the cold marble, reminding her that she didn't belong in that world of expensive suits and framed diplomas. "She doesn't even have an architect's license," muttered the chief engineer, Carlos Monte, to his colleagues. "How can she sign off on a project? That's illegal." Connie watched everything from afar, scrubbing the same piece of floor for the 3rd time. The pride she felt for her daughter's courage mixed with an icy terror that grew in her chest. She knew the dark secrets of that company, the conversations she overheard while cleaning seemingly empty meeting rooms. She knew that Gus wouldn't passively accept being contradicted. In the first week, Izzy worked 18 hours a day, transforming an abandoned room in the basement into her makeshift office. The damp, poorly lit walls contrasted brutally with the luxurious offices on the upper floor, but she didn't complain. Her drawings began to take shape, revealing an architectural vision that blended sustainability with functional beauty. "Mom, I need more books on material strength," she said one night, her eyes red with fatigue. "And if you can get some supplier catalogs, Connie nodded without hesitation, knowing that each book would cost the equivalent of days of food. She took her savings, stored in an old cookie tin, and went out in the early morning hours, scouring used bookstores and libraries in search of the materials her daughter needed. Meanwhile, 3 floors above, Gus meticulously organized his sabotage campaign. He spread rumors among suppliers about the incompetence of the new architect, questioned her technical capacity in meetings with investors, and subtly planted doubts in the minds of employees about Ted's mental sanity. "He's losing it," he whispered to important clients. "Marina's loss has affected him more than we imagined. Hiring an untrained girl for a project of this magnitude, it's concerning." The resistance didn't come only from Gus. The trained engineers saw Izzy's hiring as a personal affront to their qualifications. Marcos Silva, a structural specialist with 15 years of experience, was particularly cruel. "Where are the load calculations?" he asked during a meeting, pointing to Izzy's drawings. "How do you intend to justify these measures without a proper mathematical analysis?" Izzy took a deep breath, remembering the sleepless nights studying formulas in borrowed books. "I can show you the calculations, Mr. Silva. I did them all by hand, based on the material strength data I got from the technical manuals." When she presented sheets and more sheets of handwritten calculations, all perfectly correct, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Mark examined the numbers, looking for errors he didn't find, feeling his authority being questioned by someone who had learned on her own what he had studied at the university. On the 10th day, the situation exploded. Gus convened a meeting with the project's main investors without informing Ted. In the conference room, he presented a detailed dossier questioning Izzy's technical capacity and suggesting that the project would be a financial disaster. "Gentlemen," he said, distributing carefully prepared documents, "as minority partners, you have the right to know that our company is taking an unnecessary risk. This girl has no technical qualification or practical experience. A miscalculation can cost lives." The investors became uneasy. Roberto Campos, owner of a supermarket chain and the project's main financier, shook his head worriedly. "Gus, are you saying Ted has lost his mind?" "I don't want to question my partner publicly," Gus replied with false loyalty, "but I believe that the pain over Marina's loss is clouding his professional judgment." When Ted discovered the meeting, his fury was overwhelming. He burst into the conference room like a storm, his eyes flashing with anger. "How dare you question my decisions behind my back?" "Ted, be reasonable," Rob Campos tried to calm him. "We need to think about the company's reputation. A 19-year-old girl. A 19-year-old girl who solved in a week what our graduated architects couldn't in 6 months, Ted roared. "Have you seen her project? Have you seen the innovation, the efficiency, the beauty?" Gus maintained the calculated calm of someone who knew he was winning the battle. "Ted, nobody questions the girl's creativity. But creativity doesn't replace technical knowledge. What if the project collapses? What if someone gets hurt? The responsibility will be ours." The discussion dragged on for hours, each argument from Ted being counterbalanced by Gus's legitimate concerns. The investors left the meeting with promises to think about it, but Ted knew he had lost crucial ground. That night, alone in his office, he contemplated Izzy's drawings scattered on the table. Each line revealed a brilliant mind. Each detail demonstrated an instinctive understanding of architecture that few trained professionals possessed. But Gus's words echoed in his mind like poison. What if someone gets hurt? 3 floors below, Izzy worked feverishly, unaware of the political battle taking place around her. Connie arrived silently with more books and a cup of coffee, watching her daughter bent over complex calculations. "Honey," she said softly, "are you sure you want to continue? People are talking." Izzy looked up, revealing an iron determination that surprised her mother. "Mum, this may be my only chance to prove that I can be more than the cleaning lady's daughter. I'm not going to give up because of gossip." What neither of them knew was that, at that very moment, Gus was making calls to Pittsburgh, hiring a renowned architect to technically evaluate Izzy's work. His strategy was working perfectly: isolate Ted, undermine the confidence of the investors, and position himself as the voice of reason in a company in crisis. The storm that was approaching would be more devastating than either of them could imagine, and it would test not only Izzy's technical competence, but her ability to survive in a world where talent isn't always enough to overcome prejudice and ambition. On Monday morning of the second week, Izzy presented her complete project. The community center designed by her wasn't just a building. It was an architectural revolution that integrated handcrafted solar panels, a rainwater harvesting system, and recycled materials from the region itself, all calculated with mathematical precision that would impress any experienced engineer. Ted observed every detail with growing admiration, but his euphoria was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Dr. Frank Lancaster, a renowned architect from Pittsburgh, accompanied by Gus, who smiled with poorly disguised satisfaction. "Ted," Gus said, feigning concern, "I brought Dr. Lancaster to do an independent technical evaluation of the project. We need to be absolutely sure before submitting it to the city council." Dr. Lancaster, an austere 60-year-old with decades of experience, examined Izzy's drawings with evident skepticism. "Who is technically responsible for this project?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. "I am," Izzy replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your academic credentials?" The silence that followed was devastating. Dr. Lancaster shook his head in disapproval. "This is highly irregular. Regardless of the quality of the work, without professional licensing, this project cannot be legally approved." Gus quickly interjected. "Exactly our concern, Dr. Lancaster. Perhaps you could take on the technical responsibility for the project." Izzy felt the world crumble around her. Weeks of exhausting work, sleepless nights, her mother's sacrifices, all would be credited to another professional. Her hands trembled as she held the drawings she had created with so much care. "No," Ted said with surprising firmness. "The project is hers. We will find a legal way to make it happen." In that tense moment, the door opened and an elegant woman entered the room. Val Salviano, 35, had returned to Harmony Creek after the turbulent end of her marriage in New York City. Ted's only daughter, an architect graduated from the best university in the state, she represented everything Izzy wanted to be. "Dad," Val said, observing the scene with curiosity, "I heard you hired a new architect." The tension in the room became palpable. Gus smiled, seeing there the perfect opportunity. "Val, it's great to have you back. We just happen to need someone with your qualifications to supervise this project." Ted was torn between the relief of having his daughter back and the fear of hurting Izzy. Val examined the drawings in silence, and to everyone's surprise, her expression gradually changed from skepticism to genuine admiration. "Who did this?" she asked, pointing to an innovative detail in the support structure. "I did," Izzy murmured, expecting another humiliation. Val studied her for long seconds. "How did you learn about bioclimatic design? This concept is very advanced." "Library books," Izzy replied, surprised by the technical question instead of questions about her training. Dr. Lancaster interrupted the conversation. "Gentlemen, regardless of the artistic merit, this project needs a qualified technical supervisor. I can assume that responsibility for an appropriate fee." Gus nodded enthusiastically, but Val interrupted him. "Actually, I can be the technical supervisor. I have an active license and a specialization in sustainable architecture." Val's proposal completely changed the dynamics of the situation. Dr. Lancaster, seeing his opportunity for profit disappearing, became more aggressive in his technical criticisms, trying to discredit Izzy's project. "These structural calculations are primitive," he said, pointing to the handwritten papers. "A construction of this magnitude requires specialized software, complex computational analyses." Val examined the calculations carefully. Actually, Dr. Lancaster, these calculations are correct. The methodology is classic, but perfectly valid. Many architects today rely so much on software that they have lost the ability to calculate manually. Val's unexpected defense left everyone stunned. Gus tried to reverse the situation, but it was too late. Izzy's project had gained a powerful ally, someone with the necessary academic credentials and the courage to challenge the establishment. In the following days, a strange dynamic developed between Izzy and Val. Ted's daughter, initially motivated only by technical curiosity, began to recognize the young woman's genuine talent. She secretly provided specialized books and technical materials, creating an unlikely partnership. "Why are you helping me?" Izzy asked one afternoon, as they worked together on refining the project. Val paused, considering the answer. "Because I recognize genuine passion when I see it. I spent years at university surrounded by people who studied architecture for status or money. You study for a true love of the art of building." Meanwhile, Gus intensified his sabotage efforts. He discovered that Salviano Construction was being discreetly investigated for irregularities in previous works, information that he himself had provided to the authorities through anonymous channels. His plan was to use this investigation to force Ted to step aside from the business, taking total control himself. The pressure on Izzy became unbearable when she learned that she couldn't participate in the National Sustainable Architecture competition due to the lack of a higher education degree. The discovery happened at a cruel moment, shortly after creating an innovative material reuse technique that had impressed specialists from Pittsburgh. "It's not fair," she cried in the small apartment she shared with her mother. "I created something unique, revolutionary, but I can't even compete because I don't have a piece of paper on the wall." Connie consoled her daughter, but her own heart was broken. She knew she needed to tell the truth about her past, about the real reasons why she had worked at Salviano Construction for 15 years. But the fear of losing Izzy paralyzed her. The situation became even more complicated when Ted announced his decision to fund Izzy's university studies. "You deserve a real chance," he said. "I'll pay for your architecture school. In 5 years, you'll be a trained professional." Ted's generosity triggered a devastating family conflict. Val, who had spent years feeling neglected by her father after the loss of her mother, saw in the attention dedicated to Izzy a personal betrayal. "You barely know me since I got back from New York," she shouted during a heated argument. "But you're willing to pay for a stranger's college?" "Izzy's not a stranger," Ted replied. "She's a talented young woman who deserves opportunities." "And me? Your own daughter. What do I deserve?" The discussion exposed deep family wounds that had accumulated during years of distant relationship. Val realized that her revolt wasn't really against Izzy, but against her own father, who had never shown the same enthusiasm for her professional work. In this emotional whirlwind, a severe storm hit Harmony Creek, the kind of torrential rain typical of the Pennsylvania region that tests the resistance of any construction. The community center, still in the initial phase of construction, faced its first real test. The morning after the storm, while other works in the city showed structural damage, Izzy's construction remained completely intact. Her drainage calculations, widely questioned by traditional engineers, proved not only correct but superior to conventional methods. The news spread quickly, attracting attention from the regional press and specialized universities in sustainable architecture. Professors from Pittsburgh visited the site, impressed with the technical innovation applied by a self-taught young woman. But not even this public validation was enough to protect Izzy from the final blow that Gus was preparing. A betrayal so deep that it would threaten to destroy not only her nascent career, but the very family structure that supported her. Gus's betrayal came in the form of falsified documents that proved that Izzy had copied existing projects from famous architects. He presented this forged evidence at a morning meeting with investors, taking advantage of Ted's temporary absence, who had traveled to resolve bureaucratic issues in the state capital. "Look at these comparisons," Gus said, spreading the papers on the table. "The similarities are undeniable. The girl simply copied existing concepts and presented them as her own creation." Rob Campos examined the images side by side, shaking his head in disappointment. "This is plagiarism, Gus. If it's true, we're facing a scandal that could destroy our reputation." But Gus had underestimated Connie. During her 15 years as a cleaning lady, she had developed the habit of arriving early at the office, cleaning the rooms before the employees arrived. That morning, she heard every word of Gus's presentation through the half-open door of the conference room. Her heart raced as she understood the magnitude of the betrayal. Not only was Izzy being defamed, but the whole family was being destroyed by petty ambitions. It was then that Connie made the most courageous decision of her life. "May I come in, gentlemen?" she said, opening the door of the conference room. Gus turned red with anger. "Connie, we're in a private meeting. Get back to your work." "My work includes cleaning this room," she replied with a firmness that surprised everyone. "And during these 15 years, I've heard many interesting conversations while cleaning." Connie's tone made Gus pale. She had witnessed his suspicious phone conversations, his negotiations with suppliers who offered inferior materials at inflated prices, the secret agreements that diverted funds from public projects. "Gentlemen investors," Connie continued, addressing the astonished men directly, "you might want to know about the real problems of this company before accusing my daughter of plagiarism." Rob Campos leaned forward, intrigued. "What are you talking about, Connie?" "I'm talking about systematic overbilling, use of inadequate materials in public works, and fraudulent agreements that Mr. Gus has maintained for years." The accusation fell like a bomb in the room. Gus tried to disqualify Connie, calling her a resentful cleaning lady, but she had kept evidence for years. Conversations accidentally recorded on her cell phone when she cleaned the tables, documents found in the trash that she had saved by instinct. The revelation of Gus's corruption exposed a complex network of irregularities that involved not only Salviano Construction, but several companies in the region. The community center project, ironically, became crucial to cleaning up the company's reputation, being the only recent work developed with total transparency. When Ted returned from the state capital, he found the company in complete transformation. Gus had been removed. The investors demanded a complete audit of all the works, and Izzy had become not only the architect responsible for the company's most important project, but also a symbol of integrity in an organization that needed to rebuild itself ethically. "Connie," Ted said in a private conversation, "why did you keep this information for so long?" Her answer revealed the deepest and most painful truth of the whole story. "Because I've been in love with you for 15 years, Ted. Since my husband died in the construction accident, I couldn't hurt the company you built, even knowing the problems." The confession left Ted in a state of shock. He vaguely remembered the accident that claimed the life of Connie's husband, a collapse caused precisely by the questionable practices that Gus secretly implemented. The guilt he had always carried for the loss of his wife Marina multiplied, now including the weight of not having adequately protected his employees. Izzy, upon discovering that her opportunity at the company was intertwined with her mother's repressed feelings, went through a deep existential crisis. She questioned whether her talent was genuinely recognized or whether it was the result of complex emotional manipulation. "Mum, was everything I achieved based on a lie?" she asked, with tears in her eyes. "No, honey," Connie replied, hugging her. "Your talent is real. My feelings for Ted never influenced your abilities. They only gave me the courage to protect you when you needed it." Val, who had watched the whole family drama unfold, experienced a profound transformation. She recognized that her initial rivalry with Izzy masked her own professional insecurity. She decided to propose something revolutionary, a true partnership between them. "Izzy," she said one afternoon, "how about we open a social architecture firm? You have the natural talent, I have the academic experience. Together we can create projects that really transform communities." The proposal came at the perfect time. The National Sustainable Architecture Competition had created a special category for emerging talents, allowing Izzy to participate in partnership with a trained architect. Val offered herself as the official partner, but making it clear that Izzy would be the main creative mind. Connie faced her own challenges when a health problem forced her to temporarily step away from work. The tests revealed chronic stress accumulated during years of excessive work and repressed emotional worries. Izzy found herself torn between taking care of her mother and continuing her projects. It was Ted who resolved the situation unexpectedly. He offered Connie an administrative position in the company, finally recognizing her competence and dedication. "You know this company better than anyone," he said. "I need someone I trust to help with the ethical reconstruction of the company." The community center was inaugurated 6 months later in a celebration that brought together the entire town of Harmony Creek. The work had become an architectural landmark, being studied by universities as an example of sustainable innovation. More importantly, it had become a symbol of overcoming and renewal for the entire community. Izzy entered the Federal University through a special program for exceptional talents, but maintained her social architecture office with Val. Her first independent work would be a housing complex for low-income families, a project that would combine her innovative vision with the practical experience she had acquired. "Marina would be proud," Ted said, watching the inauguration alongside Connie. "The community center that bears her name is not just a building, it's proof that love and talent can overcome any prejudice." Connie smiled, finally at peace with herself. She always said that the most valuable people are those who build bridges where others see only chasms. The story that began with cries of despair in an auditorium ended with applause of celebration in a public square. Izzy had proven that the true worth of a person isn't measured by degrees or social origin, but by the ability to dream, create, and persist in the face of adversity. The future opened up full of possibilities, innovative projects waiting to be created, lives waiting to be transformed by social architecture, and a family rebuilt on foundations of honesty, mutual respect, and recognition of human potential in its purest and most genuine form. In the small town of Harmony Creek, where centuries-old traditions used to define people's destiny, a 19-year-old girl had rewritten the rules, proving that authentic talent always finds its way to the light, no matter how many shadows try to obscure it. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.